Let's talk about automation triggers. Now, triggers are the beginning to any workflow, journey, or drip campaign, depending on how you reference it, and it's based on either behavior, for example, opening emails, clicking on links, abandoning cart, filling out forms, and such. It could be based on just an API call that you have connected to Vbout. It could be time-based, that doesn't wait for behavior, but more of it running daily, running every Monday, or just running one time. I'm going to unpack each one of our triggers here so you can see how you can use them and in what context. The first part, you see, it's email-based, but that also includes SMS and web push engagement. I'm going to drag this on here to explain it a little bit in a second. We also have clicking on links, and this means any message that you send out, if it's an email and you include links inside the email, we can track the clicks and turn them into behavior. And the same can be done for any SMS that you send out via Vbout, as well as web push that you send out via Vbout. If you've unleashed or you installed your e-commerce integration, we can activate the abandoned cart and the completed order process. We have joined. These are the contact-based triggers. Joined meaning filling out forms, getting imported from an Excel, or you adding them manually. It can also cover being added through API calls or Zapier. So joined is a really powerful feature, probably the most used in the platform. Reaching a specific KPI or a goal. Custom event triggers, these are pretty powerful because they actually pack a lot more than one event. And finally, we have the specific date. Now, the API call usually waits for an update on contact. I'll also show you how that works. Now, once you've added the triggers, and you can see here how they're all shaped in squares. Let me zoom in a little bit. They all have square shape. The actions are usually circle shape. And this is just a visual cue to identify, once you build them, where things start. Okay. I can double click on a trigger to configure it, and you can note how it has a little exclamation mark. That means it's missing configuration. Once I open the trigger, I'm going to be presented with what looks like two tabs. Trigger criteria. These are some general configuration, and then you can dive optionally into target segments if and only if you'd like to target a specific subset of those who match the trigger. Going back to the trigger criteria, we have the trigger label, and you'll see this all around. You can change this naming to adapt it to your own brand, your own purpose, or campaign steps. So if you want, you can change it to opened January offer. The more specific, the better. Just don't make them too long, because this appear in your automation analytics and can make the chart label look pretty long. Here you have to choose which campaigns are you waiting for them to listen to. And on the drop down, I want you to note this bracket item. This item is in draft. It's an email campaign. I have an A/B testing, which is also in draft. Anything that has sent at the end, that means it's an email newsletter that was sent. And anything that has automated, this means it's an automated email that you've sent. So note, this is quite important. The labels identify the type of campaign, whether it is a newsletter one-time send or it's an automated email. You always have to choose these. For example, I can say when someone opens my welcome email, I will go ahead and trigger this. And you can listen to multiple campaigns. It doesn't really have to be just one. Apply to historical data. This one applies if you want to go back in time and pull up all the previous record from the moment I launched this automation. So that means if I click no, I finish my setup and I launch it, only the future opens are going to match. But let's assume you've sent the campaign and you want us to roll back in time for the past few days, or in the history, there's no limit. This is indefinite. I will choose yes to go back in time. Okay. For safety, we have it set to no. The target segment dives a little bit deeper. We can say only target those who match certain criteria. If you're adding multiple rules, you have to decide if you want to match all of them. That means it's an AND, or you want to match at least one of the rules. That means is an OR condition. That's going to be used a few times around the automation. You get a note. You can add a lot of these. And then on the drop down, you'll see them broken down by contact data. These are things that the record has filled out on the profile. Company data. And then it goes down to webinar attendance. These filters are really powerful, including custom fields under specific lists. Okay. You'll see here I have sample lists, and I also have the field or the custom fields used under those lists. The e-commerce is quite long. There's a lot of filters here, but you'll notice you can type into, let's say, lifetime, and then instead of having to scroll down and visually find it, I'm just, filtering out the drop down pretty much. I can then choose the secondary drop down. This is really important. I'm going to cover them more in depth in a follow-up module. Let's say greater than 1,000. And obviously the rest of these you'll have to configure. I'll just do one more. Let's say title contains CEO. All right. This drop down has a lot of options. Just make sure you choose the one that applies best. Okay. Now by doing that, the people who do open those emails, they will go to secondary round of check under the target segment, so they could match this rule 100%. They will not continue to the next step if these don't match. Very important. The click link trigger. This one, let's just give it a link to site or to sign up. Again, these are just labels for my own visual guide. And then here you'll notice we're asking you to choose a link from either an email campaign, a previously sent SMS, or a browser push. I do not have these created yet, but if I do, they're going to show up under their own title, including, in the email side, you have draft and automated, but in the browser push and SMS, it's just going to be an idle message. Okay, very easy. The moment you choose the campaign, all the links that you have added to that campaign will show up in here. Apply to historical data, goes back in time, or keep it only for future. Abandoned cart. Double clicking on that, you're going to see here, changing the label. And to explain how this works exactly, abandoned cart is the moment someone clicks on add to cart and pretty much continues the browsing experience, continues shopping around. The system by default adds a 30-minute buffer time because we're going to assume that this person will take at least 30 minutes before they check out. And you can even make it 30 minutes each time they add an item to the cart. Okay. I did skip here one option, which is selecting an active domain. If you've configured your domain with the plugin and you've connected your e-commerce, this will show up on here, and you have to choose a domain for the e-commerce side. Launch trigger. This is when to begin this trigger campaign. That means I can save this and publish it today, but I can only have it effective on the 31st. Again, this one is to reset the countdown, the default countdown every time the person clicks add to cart. And you can go back in time to apply to historical data. Now, this doesn't make really sense here to click yes. Probably it's going to be just moving forward. Now, abandoned cart requires that the person has on the checkout the option to capture an email perhaps before they start the checkout process. Some people even force any visitor, any buyer or shopper to actually when they click cart to start the sign up process. By doing that, you can parse the data over to us and the abandoned carts will be more accurate. The completed orders are not too far from how the abandoned cart works. You can specify the domain as well, change the label, when do you want to launch it effective. If you want to do it only one time, that could be the first offer. And this helps because sometimes the first purchase can be followed by a coupon, and any other purchase shouldn't. So if that's the case, you can do only one time or with each purchase over time. And you have applied to historical data. Okay. Joined. This one is the most popular. When people fill out forms, they are inserted into lists manually by you adding them. You're doing a mass import or even using Zapier APIs and so on. So this one is the most popular one. So I would say joined my Expo form. And from the drop down, you're going to see all the different forms. Okay, let's say Expo. But you're going to notice I have another label called push domain. That means the joined is not only filling out forms, it's actually people giving you consent to send them browser push messages. And this is why we're showing you landing page where we've activated a browser push. And I have a whole session on browser push notifications. You can really complement your email sign up by creating an opt-in offer for those who say yes to browser push. If you need more information about that, please follow the module on web push messages. Okay. So what I can do here is I can tell VBout, listen to Form Expo 2020 and even a master list sign up and the domain or the landing page browser push, and anybody who opted in yes to that, I would like you to go ahead and send them the following message. Now, to keep things simple, most of the time if you're doing web push, maybe you're not adding or having multi-select options. Just keep it isolated to that. But if you know what you're doing and you want to actually add multiple options, no problem at all. Okay. Reaching a goal. This one relies on the goals you've set up on the system. So if you have KPIs that you've set up and you want to trigger an automation, only when people reach those KPIs, you can choose that in here. Okay. I have a module on goals. You can go ahead and check these out on the contact section. Custom events. This is where you can get access to a lot more triggers. We just didn't display them all on the left because it will clutter the user interface, but from the drop down you're going to see things like tag added. This one is really, really handy. That means the moment someone's profile or the moment you attach a tag to a profile, and tagging is something that you have to consider for your business, then trigger this automation. So this really bridges the gap between marketing and sales, where you can tell your sales, these are the sequence of triggers that would like you to attach certain sales sequences you like to trigger. Custom API events. If you're using custom API with our automation, meaning you're parsing to the lead activity a custom note, which we cover through our API, then we can trigger an automation if that note contains a specific action. This comes handy if you're working with some developers on two-way integration between VBout and their own systems. These are based on lead scoring changes. So you can say when lead scoring is a certain number, or let's do statuses, which has some meaning to it. Moving down, you can actually check when people visit a specific landing page. This is a VBout landing page. Or if they visit a specific page on your site. This is why we need the tracking code. Email-based engagement. These are based on coupons redeemed. Some people don't find the email opens. It's because I covered it before. Or email clicks. Webinar attendance. This one syncs with Zoom and GoToWebinar. So if you have those two connected to VBout natively, you can say when people attend, this is different than registering for an event, or when people spend a certain amount of time on the webinar. This one applies for Zoom, not GoToWebinar. And finally, from this drop-down, you have a whole list of e-commerce specific triggers. For example, when someone crosses the threshold of 1,000, then what I would like to do is send them an email, add a VIP tag, or whatever you'd like. Okay, I cover these in my detailed workflow module, which goes over a lot of e-commerce specific workflows. Another handy one, which is search based for e-commerce. So if somebody's search specific product contains the name, I don't know, Ultrasun 5 sessions, then go ahead and send them something specific to that. I recommend you explore all the different custom triggers because we're adding more to it every month or so. And then you have specific date. This one is my second favorite because it doesn't really wait for an action to take place. You can just trigger it one time on, let's say, the 30th of the month, and from here, just continue. Now you'll notice a couple of options. One of them is choosing the target list. You can actually target a specific list, which you know what that is by now. An audience, that means a segment of your list, if you've created, let's say, Gmail emails only. And you can even target landing pages or websites where you have the web push active. So you can think this option of marrying the target and the one time only almost like a scheduling utility, like you're sending a newsletter campaign. Okay. Now obviously if you click recurrent, it changes the whole dynamics of this trigger. Now you can trigger it every day, Monday only, Tuesday, multiple days through the week. But you have to be careful because if you don't have a specific target segment, it's going to go through the entire list or visitors of your browser push. And from here, it's going to trigger the action. So you don't want to be sending the same thing over and over every day. Usually you add some sort of a filter under the target segment. It could be birthday. I don't know if you have birthday here, date of birth. Here we go. Is after X days, let's say, or for X days, 5 from today. And save. Finally, the contact update API. This one listens to specific API calls that are sending contacts to master list, and it can have it one time or recurrent. This works handy, again, if you have some sort of a two-way integration between Vbout and your own systems. And these are the triggers available on Vbout. We are constantly adding different options, but understanding how you can begin a workflow really sets the pace for you to create super powerful automations.